Peace, blessings, and elevation. We will bring you inspiring stories, expert insight, and practical tools and information to support you. Types in embracing our authentic selves, we can pave the way for a brighter future for ourselves and our children. Power, heal, and support fathers and men on their journey. I'm your host, Kelly Little, aka the Village King. Welcome to the Father's Haven. And you are the third, correct?
Yes, I'm the third.
Outstanding. So look, the first question we're going to ask is, what was it like growing up in the 60s?
It was actually exciting. It was a rough time, but it was a good time. And if you were a kid during that time, you really didn't uh you really weren't connected to the roughness of it, the civil rights movement and all that. Yeah, I think the 60s were a very interesting time. Scary, scary somewhat as a kid, but also because there was some naivety there. Like as a kid, you don't really understand what's going on. You were impacted different.
Okay. Geographically, where were you at during the 60s?
I was in Newark, New Jersey. Also during the 60s, there was more community, I guess people formed bonds in their neighborhood, things of that sort.
Got it. So when you think community, when you think Newark, New Jersey, in the 60s, civil rights area, how did you develop your values as a kid?
Well, your values were still by your parents. You have family values, but also during that time, because it was like a revolution, there's a big change. Kids were developing a subculture, you know, their own values of what they value. But basically, when you were at home or around adults or relatives, those values, I think they were uh, remnants of the old school, like, yeah.
And so, like, as we unpackage that and we think about civil rights movement being fed up, culturally connected in a pretty big city, you got Newark right there at New York. Philadelphia is just the opposite way, and all these people combining to pretty much rise up against inequity and creating new opportunities. uh how would you say, let me back up a second, understanding that you're a third,
Yes.
what would you say that your relationship with your father was, and how did it kind of shape how you
Well,
father?
well, I grew up in a single parent home. So my father was around, but he wasn't present. And he was all over the place. He was pretty popular and things of that sort. So I didn't really get a chance to bond. He was just all over the place, older. So people were grabbing him, like he was always engaged in something. But without back, I wanted to back up for a minute because when you talk about the culture, I think the young people during the 60s, although they depended on their age. Of course, if you were in your late teens, early 20s in the 60s, you kind of understood the revolution. But the young people, like if you were like preteen and still in grammar school, uh, you kind of felt what was going on, and
Hmm.
you knew there was some resistance going on to the system. So as a young person, when I say young, I'm talking about during the civil rights movement, I was like 10, 11, around that age. You kind of just assume the 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 stance of resistance, not understanding. I mean, you knew the cops were the pig. We were promoting Black Power, so that was our mantra as children, and not really understanding why. But the adults around you, they're doing it, so you kind of like feel like you have to participate.
So when you think about that, in that time, you talked about connectedness of community, family environment. How would you say, being an adolescent during that time, share some of the things that were really good? You
Yes,
mentioned some fair points. Let's talk about a little bit of the fair. And then one last caveat. When I think about civil rights movement and you talked about young people, I think about the ages of Dr. Martin Luther King, your Huey P. Newtons, and your Malcolm X's, and they were all young people who were carrying that movement. Um,
absolutely. I mean, they were young when you look back on it, but as a kid, so I was a kid in the 60s. So, 68, I was 10.
mhm,
So, from 65 or 63. I mean, I remember, believe it or not, I remember the energy in the air in 63 when Kennedy was killed, assassinated. So as a child, you pick up energy, you pick up vibrations and things of that sort, and you kind of respond to it. So again, community, we had the traditional family value community, and then you had your neighborhood community. We didn't have social media, we didn't have a technology, so we had to come together. We had our differences as young people. We had to work things out, and there were adults who acted as mentors, like they would intercede and help us understand community and brotherhood. So that was the best part about it. Of course, there was some opposition, there was some contrast there, because everybody didn't come up the same way. So,
mhm.
you still had your territorial stuff going on back then. Yeah.
So, so as you kind of unfold that, what would you say was one of your greatest memories as a young person growing up in that
Greatest
era?
family, because when the family got together, and we had extended families, of course, you had your neighborhood people, but our parents and grandparents, strong ties to people, whether, I mean, my grandfather had ties to baseball players. My aunt had ties to revolutionaries. So depending on how they connected, determine what you were exposed to. But they'll be around, they'll be talking, you know, debating, debating issues, just talking. So it was great. That was great for me because I was paying attention. I listened and I'm trying to make sense of what's going on around me, and then listening to family, and then kind of looking at that from the backdrop of what was going on. So the greatest time was with family.
So I'm loving the answer, and I'm also loving the environment that led up to kind of shaping your perspective of these things. And with that, I'll ask, as a result of community, family, that connection, what's in the air, at what point did you establish your resolve around what kind of man you wanted to be?
That happened when I knew I was going to be a father.
Okay.
So I mean, things kind of shifted in the early 70s because after the dust settled a little from all of the havoc and chaos of the late 60s, uh, things started to change a little. Uh,
Mhm.
so I think kids were being spoiled, like in the early 70s. What really changed my perspective on manhood was when I knew I was going to have a kid. That makes a big difference. If you understand that this is a responsibility, and then if you look at it against some of the fathers that you saw, even my father, some of the fathers that you saw during the 60s, um, you had to make some choices. You had to know if you were going to be a 60s dad, a 50s dad, or you were going to take information from both of those experiences and determine what kind of dad you were going to be. You understand? So that's a big shift.
Look, and you had to make that analysis based on being a young person experiencing one of the most critical times for people of color, in particular Black people. And you talked about, right, these different genres, 50s, 60s, experiencing this movement, and you at the same time feeling this energy, but also what I remember about reading about the 60s, as I was born in the early 70s, was this whole new ideal of innovation, opportunity. And as a result of what was transpiring during the 60s, it was this new vision, right? So, with all that, what were your, you talked a little bit about being young in that area, but what was your preteens like? And at what point did you know what you wanted to be as an adult?
Well, preteens yeah, being a young child from the 60s, because you had to be paying attention. You had to be trying to make sense out of what you were experiencing, because the authority for me during the 60s were those from the 50s and the 40s, so you got a little bit of that, and then you got this liberation and this revolution going on. So you had to like kind of situate those two, I guess it was ways of thinking, which then shaped how you made sense of what you were experiencing.
Mhm.
So during this, I mean, I had a great time. Even in the chaos of the 60s, as a kid, because you don't understand everything, you felt like you and your people were being empowered, you know, and because there was so much community in the community. Now, I'm not talking about family community. That was one thing, but they had more insight of what was going on. So we sat around, counting their teeth and listened to what they were saying. That was one thing. But then when you got together with your friends, that was a whole different energy. I mean, we were little rebels. So up until up until when I was got ready to graduate high school, it was just carefree. Like a lot of things changed in the early 70s because of the revolution. A lot of opportunities opened up. Um, Disco was out. That was a era that kind of made people forget about stuff and be happy. You know, Everybody was hanging out, dancing, so it was fun. And then along come my son. I was like, wait a minute, you can't do this. Or how you going to do this and be responsible? And my definition of responsibility came from everything I knew. Good dads, bad dads, uh, you know, all that I saw prior to that. And like you said, what determined how I was going to be, all of that had an impact. And I knew I had to be responsible. So, I had some good family members. Yeah, but I had an aunt that was Muslim, that was very steeped in esoteric literature, very well read. Great aunt that was the same. And they talked to my uncle. They used to pull me aside, and talk about manhood and fatherhood and all of that kind of stuff. And it didn't go in one ear and out of the other. I mean, if there's something somebody's telling you that you don't like, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't get rid of them. You just say, okay, I don't agree with that. Let me still listen to what they have to offer. I have some good teachers.
So when you think about that time and navigating from preteens, moving through high school, and you talked about the influences and the family members who played a critical role. I think contextually, we also have to make sure anyone who's listening now have to understand the responsibility and accountability at younger ages during that time was a lot different than it is today. Um,
Yeah. the kids today, they don't have to listen to you. They got a whole bunch of other places to get information. We didn't have that. I mean, academia, go to the library and do that kind of stuff. But in terms of life lessons, I couldn't go to YouTube and tap into somebody who's telling me something.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to listen to your mentors. And of course, I was a very well liked young person, kid, period. So people told me stuff and talked to me and guided me, So that makes a difference. Uh, and some people just reject it, might have rejected it like coming up, they just want to be gangster, they just want to play, they don't want to take anything serious. Because when people tell you what you need to do or they suggest certain things and you listen to them, you got to make some sacrifices. You can't serve two masters. And some young people, they wanted to do their thing. So they weren't
Mm-hmm.
willing to be disciplined and put in the work that was called for, even though you didn't know totally what the outcome of your work was going to be. Only thing you had to compare it to was the person who's telling you. If
Mm-hmm.
you respected the person who's telling you or your mentor, and you listen to these people, you value what they said, and you made an effort to do it. My biggest thing was how am I going to do that, be responsible, and still have fun? So that was the balance of it. I mean, as a young person, you got a lot of energy. I remember like hanging out and going straight to class in college, you know, studying, cramming. That's what we did. Now, some people got lost in the in the play. They didn't want to go back and put in the other work. So
So wow, now you cooking. So when we talk about the college experience during your time, what did you major in, and how did college help shape who you are
college.
today? And
I
then I
majored
got
in, go ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Now I'll add them on later.
Right. I majored in communication and sociology. College was a trip. I mean, I went to a semi Ivy League Catholic college,
Okay.
and coming from an urban area, they don't prepare you for college. Those inner city schools don't prepare you for college. They don't prepare you for the challenges. Of course, I went through one of those programs for urban kids that you have to like a summer get ready, and they had a lot of support for you. You had to, coming from this kind of environment I came from, you had to be strong and determined to get through college, because them suckers will make you drop out. So yeah, that was the question. How was college?
Yep.
It was challenging. It was challenging. I mean, I did well, but you can't, and I still played,
Mm-hmm.
so I was determined to get through. And one of the, probably if I didn't have a kid, I might have made a different decision. You know what I mean? So having a kid said, you got to get through this because, all of the communication was like, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, get a good job.
Wow. So as you were sharing that, one of the things that was running through my mind was, what was your greatest dream? Yet reflecting back, what was your most relevant reality during that time?
Raising my kid, that
Okay.
was it. So anything I did, that was in the back of my mind. And that was all based on my experience, my personal experience, or my ancillary experiences that came from mentors, conversation. You know, you become the sum total of all of us.
Cool. So, all right, we've heard this theme of your kid, your kid, your kid. So it speaks volumes to who you are as a person, the influences that have been in your life, that you were able to prioritize some people, particularly during that time. Because if we think about it, that whole the whole child support system and all those things kind of remove, particularly in communities of color, a lot of males had to move away from the home for mom to get support.
right.
you made sure you was connected. So what I would like to know is, what was it like when you first heard you was going to be a dad?
It was like the responsibility just kind of set in. You think differently if you want to be responsible. And some people are like, okay, but that type of information automatically should make you a man, make you think, I gotta be responsible, you know, I'm gonna have to make some sacrifices, so that was it. That's the first thing. It's like, okay, if you want to play, you still got to take care of business. You can't ever forget that you're responsible, like for something, someone.
How did your experience with your father shape how you father?
Well, he was around, but he wasn't really present. He was very selfish, in my opinion. So, you look at things and you're like, I'm not gonna do that, or you look at other people and say, this is the type of person I would like to be.
And so you pull some things from mentors, other family members.
Yeah, you
Um,
have to. You have to. And some parents is like, you do what I tell you to do. I ain't doing what you tell me to do. You telling me some bullshit. I know it's bullshit because I have some other stuff to compare what you're saying to. I wouldn't listen. I was not the one. I would leave. I would go somewhere else. I would leave. I'll tell you, I'm not doing that.
what's
No, I'm
funny
not.
is I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to add because where you said nope, I'm not doing what you say, and that's right at the era where
You were
you
supposed
were
to.
hearing do as I say, not as
Right.
I do.
Not me. I was
I
not the
love it.
one. And you have to stand for something, and whatever you stand for is comes from what you know and what you experience. It might not all be pristine, but I ain't doing that. Well, that's not right, and you ain't gonna make me do it because it's wrong. I mean, if something is wrong, it ain't gonna win. And if your goal and your objective is to do the right thing, and that's what you put out there and kind of want to follow, you'll be safe, because I believe we create our own reality based on what we do, like what we think and what we do.
Mhm.
Now, if somebody gives you some bad advice and you do it, your reality will become the consequences of that advice. If you reject it and try and find a better way, your reality will reflect that.
Look, y'all getting a whole lot of gems right now. And it's only fitting that you said that's some BS. I'm not gonna do that because morally and ethically it's not right.
Right,
Knowing that you was a child that grew up in the
right,
era where disruption and being able to be revolutionary in your thinking,
right.
that's who you are.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be really like most kids love their parents or love, the people, and they can be abusive. They can
Mhm.
be feeding you some garbage, and that's what makes the people the children who they are. And then, and if you reject that, even if you don't know uh exactly what's right, if you reject wrong, something else got to show up. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like all the young people who know something is wrong, but they want to be a part of something, or they go with what's wrong. But just hang tight. No, I ain't doing that, and something else will show up.
Make room for those things that are supposed to happen and righteous
Right?
to come
It'll come.
along. That's great
It'll come.
advice.
Eventually, it will come. It might not come in your time because you might have to do some suffering, so to speak, you know. But you got to be disciplined and stay with it and know what you want for it to show up.
Look, I'm loving that because I remember Frederick Douglass said there can be no progress without a struggle, and that's that suffering you talking about.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and the more you do it, the more it happens quickly. Like the more you, for me anyway, the more I live by those principles. If I said, no, I'm not doing that, in a matter of no time, the right thing, something better will show up.
What was the most challenging thing about fatherhood for you?
Uh, the mother, because initially I think women have some kind of idea about family.
Hmm.
And when you're not going to have the traditional family, it could be challenging. So I didn't want to make problems. Like I don't want we can learn from, and we're not going to be
Oh,
negative. So we're going to find the plus in what we're experiencing. Now, I had an aunt who told me, she said, you don't want to create chaos in that union. You don't want to. So I grew up like two adults are arguing about something as a kid involved. I'll take the kid to go get some ice cream. I'm going to remove them from, because that's very harmful to have that sort of chaos, especially to subject children to chaos.
so
I always told my son, look, you're fortunate because you see both sides of whatever it is. You have all of this to experience, and it's a good thing. So that was the most challenging thing, being separated. I was never separated because I was always going to enter the picture politely.
and just based on what you just shared, this is some great information for either future fathers, current fathers who don't understand the importance of being able to de-escalate, being able to remove um, anything that's divisive or not collective at that time, because particularly when we're younger as men and fathers, we don't know how to have discourse and not make it emotional. You, on the other hand, use it, and it might be tied to those communication skills and schooling you had, but
No,
also
I
around the
just
people you've been around.
that's it. School is wonderful. You learn a lot. You learn about different communities, different ways of thinking, but your real teacher is the experiences that you're having. So what I drew from was not the communications that I was getting in school, but the communications I was having with my mentor.
So when you think back on those moments and being in the struggle of being a man, a father, did you ever feel like you were over your head?
No, I didn't because I always looked at being responsible and
Hmm.
how to be responsible for what I was doing and what was presented to me in my life and looking for the best solution. And again, I go back to if you don't settle and you see you're gonna find it's gonna show up.
Hmm.
So kind of naturally just being wanting to do the right thing or wanting to do the responsible thing, you reflect upon it, you have your your relationship with your higher power, and it's going to show up right. The whole faith thing and all of that, I don't know I don't know what people call it or whatever you call it. It's real. It's real. We create our own reality, and you gotta want to do the right thing. Of course, that can be qualified depending on who's saying what's right. But whatever you want will show up.
Look, that's a powerful statement. And scripturally, whether Bible, Quran, we have these religious principles, and then you look at like the was it the seven hermetic principles about the universal law, and what you just said is what you believe, we manifest into reality.
Absolutely.
All those things are like you said. I mean, it's truth.
Yeah, I used
Because if
to,
I
I
see
used
a
to,
black cat and I know it's gonna bring bad luck, it's always gonna bring me bad luck.
right, right. I went away, like I used to live in Barbados, all that Hermetic stuff and esoteric stuff, I read tons of. So, I mean, and I gave it to my son, my grandson, it's good information. But yeah, I've I've had everything. I mean, my life has been great. And that comes from wanting what's good, doing what responsible. It just shows up. So yeah, so those are many principles, man. That stuff is real. That's fire.
I love how you framed all this. And when I think about this, you've mentioned sacrifice. You've mentioned prioritizing your son. When you think about all of that sacrifice and everything that you contributed, did you ever feel at any point all those things that you sacrificed and contributed wasn't going to pay off with your child? Or did you feel like it was going to be the thing that gave him, even if he had to struggle through some things, the
Right.
best of his world?
Absolutely. I mean, I knew what it was doing for me. Sacrifice, the Hermetic principle, all that. So I've drummed that in his head, and I knew if he applied it, he'll be
Mhm.
fine. I just told his mother, he'll be fine. I ain't worried about him. He'll be fine. Because I knew what went in. And I'm not talking about academically from just family values. I'm talking about all of that stuff that I studied, and I'm like, check this out, apply this, and you'll be fine. So if he was during this time, I think he was reading a lot of stuff like that. So I'm like, he'll be fine. I have no doubts in what the universe can do.
So tell the audience where you at right now as we're having this conversation.
Oh, well, I'm in Colombia, in Cartagena.
And you mentioned being in Barbados. And so not only you're rearing in New Jersey, but you're a worldly man whose son has been to multiple places throughout the country. And that's part of the example that you set. So I bring that into the conversation to say, what are some other pieces of wisdom that you want to freely share for young fathers, current fathers, experienced fathers to reflect on in their fatherhood?
Well, I think don't limit your experiences. Like, of course, a lot of my esoteric stuff came from study, uh, but just traveling the world. In 2016, I traveled around the world. Uh, Took 180 days to travel around the world. I lived in Paris, I lived in Barbados, and I still travel because meeting other people and experiencing other cultures help you understand that sometimes we've been given a bad dose. Everybody's not going through what we go through. So and follow your intuition. Don't follow the crowd or don't look at what John is doing, especially if it ain't working right. Might be better than what you're doing in the moment, but it ain't working right. Yeah, say no, I ain't doing that. You know what I'm saying? So don't stop looking until the positive or productive thing shows up. And you'll know when it show up. I always say something speaks to you. Something speaks to you, and that's your conscience. And if you want to have the best life experience and create the best reality, that's the conversation that you're having, and your conscience will guide you in the direction where those things will show up. Don't settle for I can't. We couldn't say I can't, like there's those negative words aren't in the vocabulary. What do you mean? Not, no, don't. Do it. If your spirit is moving you to do something, do it. And you know right from wrong. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the best advice. You know right from wrong. I believe people know right from wrong. Some people are so used to wrong that it doesn't seem wrong. But if you have some principles and you want to do the right thing, you'll evaluate the situation. And it's right, it was wrong.
Look, so now I got a parting question to kind of land the helicopter for us. Now they don't know, but I know a lot of things that you've helped to expose Chablis to, which is your son. and how those practices, approaches, has led to his optimization over the last, 5 to 10 years, exposing them to properties and worldly events and understanding about trust funds and all those things. So that's going to tie me into the importance of legacy. How would you suggest fathers create a legacy that transcends their child to their great grandchildren?
You have to put in the right stuff. Like then goes back to what we were talking about, doing the right thing, not being stirred in the wrong direction. Even well, like I said, as a kid, you can't tell me to do something and I know it's wrong. I'm not doing it. I don't care who you are, my father, nobody. So having your principles and following them and you creating the sort of reality that that that's I hate using right and wrong, but you create the reality that you want. That's the legacy right there. Because if you instill that, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. My nephew, people I talk to, once I know they got it, I don't worry about them. That's the legacy right there. But they're gonna go on and do uh, what they want and need to do. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean creating something concrete, physical,
Mhm.
but it means having a life that's not a burden. That's what it is, right? I mean, I've had it all, like, and it's applying those principles. There's nothing that that I want to do that I can't do or that I haven't done. And that's the legacy. To teach somebody that, to me, that's most valuable. But they understand that they're the driver. You're the driver here.
So words can't express my appreciation for how you have journeyed through your transition in life to where you're at right now, because to make sure we understand that beyond academics, beyond whatever struggle we went through, we are who we understand ourselves to be.
That's it.
And, and from that perspective, everything else is limitless.
That's it. That's it. You hit the nail right on the head. I mean, I think young people need good mentors and good people steering them in the right direction. If you're only exposed to negative stuff, that's what you know. But if you don't accept the negative stuff and you know you want something different, it'll show up. Give it time. Don't fall for the negativity. But people they need mentors. They need people to help them along. Life is tough. It could be really tough. The system doesn't make it easy for us.
Y'all heard it right here. Couple things. First, you heard the comment of present versus presence consistently, standing on your morals and your ethics, embracing life and seeing the possibilities and not the challenges, because they the same thing. It
Right.
just depends on how you look at it. And
Yeah.
then
I always tell people apply it and watch it. And if you apply it and watch it and see that it worked three times of that, you convince. I mean, of course, when I first started understanding this stuff and applying it, I was a little skeptical, but that stuff works every time. Every time.
wow. Well, look, y'all got an airful tonight. And so what I would ask everybody who gets the opportunity to listen to this, don't just listen to it, apply it. If you apply it, you will change not only your life, but every person you come into contact with, every family member who sees you as that model, and it will shift the trajectory of this universe and any person that's in proximity to you, because I promise you, they'll pass these lessons on. And one thing that I can say for certain, I told you, I've been around this man 3 times before, and every time his personality is one thing, his energy speaks to you before he even speaks to you. Some of y'all might not get that right now, but you'll get it later. You need people like this in your life. Wow.
I have to say I had good people in my life that helped. If they weren't there, I don't know where I would be. And if I didn't have a kid, I don't know where I that's an important piece of it because that makes you become responsible.
I thought I was going to land the helicopter. There's one last thing I need from you. Understanding your son's journey. How does it feel to see how he's a living, breathing expression of you right now, exemplifying all the stuff that we've talked about over the last hour?
Well, that's what the sit the understanding of this tells you. So it's just showing up the way it's supposed to show up. Like, I don't worry about, I never worry about them because if you follow those principles, you don't have to worry. The universe will take you exactly where you want to go.
Wow. Y'all heard it.
Yeah.
Peace, blessings, and elevation. We will bring you inspiring stories, expert insight, and practical tools and information to support you. Types in embracing our authentic selves, we can pave the way for a brighter future for ourselves and our children. Empower, heal, and support fathers and men on their journey. I'm your host, Kelly Little, aka the Village King. Welcome to the Father's Haven.